Welcome back to Horrors Worldwide. Today I'm going to explain a British psychological horror film called Repulsion, released in 1965. Spoilers ahead! Watch out and stay safe. Carol Ledoux, a beautiful and shy Belgian manicurist, lives in London with her older sister Helen. Carol is remarkably detached and struggles in her daily interactions. A suitor, Colin, is enamored with her and makes fervent attempts to court her, but Carol seems uninterested. Carol is troubled by Helen's relationship with a man named Michael, whom Carol seems to dislike. She is bothered by his habit of leaving his razor and toothbrush and her glass in the bathroom, and at night struggles to sleep, bothered by the sounds of her sister and Michael having sex. But Helen doesn't care whether Carol likes her boyfriend or not, as long as she is happy with Michael. The next morning, Helen and Carol have a conversation about Helen's affair, and she warns Carol not to interfere in her personal life. They are also due on the rent and the landlord calls them for it, which Helen handles by requesting one more date time and the landlord agrees for that. After getting ready, Carol comes to her salon, where she looks for her friend Bridget. Carol finds Bridget downstairs, crying alone because Bridget's boyfriend is leaving her. The breakup, or what Bridget talks about in men, doesn't surprise Carol, since she already has a bad impression about men. Later, when Carol walks home from work that day, she is bothered by a crack in the sidewalk, and she sits on the road bench, looking at the cracks. Inside a restaurant nearby, Colin is waiting for the date with Carol, which they both agreed to before. Waiting for almost 1 hour, and not seeing her makes Colin angry, and he leaves the restaurant. On his way out, he notices Carol sitting on a road bench in the far distance. He walks up to her and asks for the reason why he has been made to wait that long, to which Carol replies she forgot about the date. Colin feels something wrong with her behavior and he is worried. He then drives her home and tries to kiss her several times, but she pulls away, running upstairs and vigorously brushing her teeth before weeping. Carol sees Michael's toothbrush and shaver in her glass again, and out of anger, she dumps that in the trash can. Helen tries to comfort Carol without knowing what actually is going on with her sister. That night, Carol again hears voices and murmuring from Helen's room. As she struggles to sleep due to the voice, the door opens suddenly and Helen comes in. She is half naked and doesn't look happy. All the caring and love Helen showed earlier that day has gone now, and she wants to know why Carol dumped Michael's things in the trash can. Carol calmly tells her that she doesn't like his toothbrush and shaver on her glass, which makes Helen more angry. She scolds Carol for the act and leaves the room. The next morning, Helen and Michael depart for Italy on holiday, leaving Carol alone in the apartment. Helen kisses Carol, tells her the rent money is on the table, and she wants Carol to give the money to the landlord. Carol requests Helen not to go, but Helen doesn't consider her request, and they leave as Carol watches them drive away from the window. At the salon, Carol becomes increasingly distant, barely talking to her coworkers and customers. Her boss then decides to send her home for the day. After coming home, Carol takes a rabbit out of the fridge for dinner. Instead of cooking it, she is distracted by several of Michael's possessions left around the apartment, including an unwashed shirt whose odor makes her vomit. After trying on one of her sister's dresses, Carol sees a dark figure in the mirror. When she looks at the mirror again, the figure disappears and Carol goes back to her bedroom. That night, she hears footsteps outside her bedroom. Carol's isolation begins to take its toll on her, and she misses 3 days of work. One morning, she runs a bath and walks away, causing it to overflow. As she turns on a light, the wall cracks open. She locks herself in her room and again hears footsteps. This time, she hallucinates that a man breaks into her room and rapes her. She is awakened in the hallway by a phone call from Colin, but she hangs up and walks into the kitchen for breakfast. Carol finds only some sugar cubes, which are in edible condition, and eats one of them. After returning to the salon, her boss asks the reason why she didn't come to the salon for 3 days. Carol says one of her aunts suddenly visited her, and she had no other choice. The boss believes her, but warns her to inform if something like that happens again. Later, while she is giving a manicure, she cuts her client's finger and causes bleeding. Seeing Carol not focusing on the work, her boss tells her to go home. Bridget changes Carol's dress and inquires about Carol's problem, but Carol says nothing about all the hallucinations or anything to her. Bridget suggests Carol go for a movie, and she also speaks about a Charlie Chaplin movie she watched the day before. They both laugh at a scene in that movie, before Bridget finds out the head of the rabbit is in Carol's handbag. On her way, she is thinking about something, totally away from the world and not even noticing a group of people playing drums on the street. Meanwhile, Colin tries to call Carol, but she won't answer. When he comes back to the bar, his friends make fun of him and his relationship with Carol. Angered, Colin grabs one of his friend's collars and tells him to stop talking about his girl. The other friends calm him, but the conversation ends with the friend kissing Colin on the lips. Colin leaves the bar after wiping his lips with his own hand, suggesting what someone would do if that person is forcefully kissed. At the apartment, Carol stares at an old family photo and the wall behind the photograph shatters like a mirror.
There's somebody there. I can see your shadow. What's the matter? I just wanted to talk to you, that's all. Carol!
Colin subsequently arrives at the apartment, but Carol refuses to open the door, so he breaks in. He declares his love for her and his wish to marry her. While this happens, an old lady is watching them from outside. Colin then closes the door, which makes the old lady also go inside her apartment. When Colin is turned towards the door, while locking it, Carol hits him in the head from behind with a candlestick and kills him. She cleans the blood, barricades the door, and places Colin's corpse in the bathtub. In bed, she experiences the same rape hallucination. She wakes up the next morning naked on the floor. In a subsequent scene, she walks down the dark hallway of her apartment, where hands appear out of the walls and grab her.
Bitch.
I'm sorry. Who is this?
Who is this? Who is this? Who do you think, you filthy little tart? Do you think I don't know he's with you? You think you're clever, but you're not that clever, you filthy.
Later, the angry wife of Michael calls looking for Helen, causing Carol to cut the wire of the telephone. The landlord arrives to collect their rent. He knocks on the door, but Carol doesn't open it. Knowing that someone is inside, the landlord takes his spare key and opens the door, but he is unable to get in due to the barricade. He then breaks into the apartment and sees Carol standing at the corner. He is angry at her for not paying the rent and barricading the door against him, but calms down when Carol pays him the rent. The landlord opens the window curtain and allows some light to fall inside the room, which Carol doesn't appreciate since she likes to be in the dark. After putting the money in his bag, the landlord brings up the bad condition of the apartment with a very bad motive in his mind. He tells Carol that he is disgusted by the state of the apartment and offers a deal to Carol that he'll forget about the rent if she takes care of him. He then tries to rape her when she doesn't respond. Carol pushes the landlord off and then stabs him to death with Michael's straight razor. She then sinks deeper into hallucination, and her mind goes completely out of control. After a few days on a rainy night, Helen and Michael arrive home after their vacation, and Helen is dismayed at the state of the place. Michael happens on Helen hyperventilating and finds Colin's dead body in the bath. Michael then goes to the porter's room to call the ambulance and cops. Back at the apartment, Helen finds Carol's hand under her bed, and her neighbors flood in and lift the bed, revealing Carol in a catatonic state. Neighbors are just standing around and no one is trying to help Carol or stop Helen from touching her. Michael comes back after the phone call and picks her up, carrying her outside of the apartment. In the living room, a family photo shows Carol as a child, blankly staring at an older male family member, while others in the photo smile for the camera. So who do you think is responsible for Carol's behavior? Herself or others? Let us know in that comment section down below. For more horror film recaps, be sure to subscribe, watch our other videos, and click the bell icon to be notified of the next videos. See you in your nightmares.